Hello, dear friends. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in this webinar hosted by the Urantia Association Education Committee. Today, we have the participation of Gard Jameson, who will present the theme, the vision of education with respect to the revelation. Now, let me introduce you Gard briefly. Gard Jameson received his PhD from Pacifica Graduate Institute in 2005 and his BA from Stanford University in Religious Studies. He teaches Asian philosophy at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He is the author of 5 books: Footprints on the Sands of Time, The Peace Pilgrim Pictures, Phaeton, Monkey, and Ramayana, Our Mythic Moment. The last 3 books reflecting upon 3 grand epics from the West, China, and India. He and his wife co-founded Volunteers in Medicine of Southern Nevada, VMSN.org, a charitable clinic that provides free medical, dental, and mental health care to those without access. Gard Jameson has been reading the Urantia book since 1972. He has been leading a study group in Las Vegas since 1985, which is now a Zoom group. He currently serves as a trustee at Urantia Foundation and is the head of the Education Committee for Urantia Foundation. He is married to Dr. Florence Jameson and has 2 daughters, Julia and Angie. Thank you, Gard, for your willingness to serve. The session is yours.
Thank you so much. And thank you for sponsoring this. And thank you to all of your team members, Chris and everybody else that's been involved. And I want to welcome everybody to this session. And as I was thinking about the title, I sort of slapped myself because it's just a vision. It's not the vision. We each have a vision. When I begin my classes at the University of Nevada, I always refer to the story of the blind man and the elephant and suggest that each of us has experience, and to the extent we speak to our own experience, we're generally correct. To the extent that we deny the experience of somebody else, we're generally wrong. So what I'll be sharing this morning is my personal sense of education, some 50 years into this revelation, and a little bit of perhaps our destiny and where we might be focusing our attention. So I want to begin this morning, with your permission, with 2 minutes of silence in which we can give thanks to the sponsor of all of this, God, our Father and our Mother. So if you'll join me and take a deep breath and get yourself into a relaxed position and close your eyes and realize that the creator of the universe is dwelling within you and wants in every way, shape, and form to experience your love and to love you and to encourage each of us. So let us begin with 2 minutes of silence, and I'll bring us out with a short prayer. Heavenly Father and Divine Mother, Creator, Sustainer, and Destiny of each of our souls. You are our light and our salvation. We enter into your gates with thanksgiving, with a grateful heart for all that we have been given. May our emptiness be filled by your divine presence. May our faces radiate with the fruits of the Spirit, of your divine Spirit. May we learn to be still and worship your holy presence and be transformed in that loving regard. May we each experience the fullness of your wisdom and of your compassion. May our mourning in this pandemic be transformed into compassion, and may our compassion be transformed into peacemaking, and may our peacemaking give honor to thy divine revelation, both within and in the Fifth Epochal Revelation. We give thanks for each other, for our community, for this planet, and the privilege of living on Urantia 606 in this moment. May we each be ambassadors of your unfailing forgiveness, your matchless goodwill, and your abounding love. In the name of our Creator Son and Creative Mother Spirit, we give you thanks and say amen. So I want to share with you kind of where we're going to go, the roadmap this morning. I have a PowerPoint presentation which I'm going to share, but I want to first of all do a little bit of a check-in, and I'm going to use a program that I discovered last week called Menti, and I don't know how this is going to work. You'll forgive me, you're kind of all the guinea pigs of this experiment, but I think it might work. So let's see here. Well, so it's not, it is not performing the way I expected. So if you would do me a favor, and just in the chat line, if you would go ahead and put in your chat line one word of check-in. So let's just go ahead and use the chat line, one word of check-in for those of you that have access. For those of you that don't, you can just share that check-in in your heart. Victor, love, serenity, David. Darla, Roger, love, peace, hopeful, equilibrium, I love it. Faith, grateful, Ann Garner. Kurt, peace, camaraderie, gratitude, serenity. John, thank you. Lovely. And Collins, thank you. Jeannie, faith. Adaptability, wow, that's a good one. Assurance, Marjorie, thank you. Marilyn, goodness. Sagacity and wisdom. Harmony, compassion. Thank you, Susanna. Lovely, lovely. And joy. Let's cap it off with joy, Gayetan. Thank you so much. I love, I just finished teaching Indian philosophy, and they have a lovely term in Indian philosophy, Satchidananda, Gi, staying teachable. It's Satchidananda, which means that when we access or we begin to approach God through our awareness, we experience a quality of divine bliss, which is part of, if you will, the fruits of the Spirit. And I tell my students when I teach, this is really just a game show. We're going to teach you that this game show has two doors. One has a quality of love, joy, and peace, and the other is fear, anger, and anxiety. And I tell them, this is your first pop quiz. However many of you would like to stay in that door number one of fear, anxiety, and anger, don't raise your hands, just see me after class. So that's how we begin our semester together. So this morning, I would like to share with you a vision of education honoring the Fifth Epochal Revelation. And as everybody on this call knows, we have been contacted, and how blessed we are, each and every one of us, to know that. As I witness my students' eyes at the beginning of the semester, there's almost a glaze, a kind of paralysis. Somebody used the word adaptability, an incapability or a lack of capacity for adaptability. And I tell them what we're going to do is teach you some tools. We teach them to meditate, and we teach them loving kindness meditation and a few different tools to begin to migrate to door number two, to that quality of awareness, which is characterized by love and joy, and a quality of equanimity, to use Elizabeth's beautiful word. So what I want to share this morning is this vision honoring the Fifth Epochal Revelation, and I want to parse it. And again, this is just my own way of seeing education in the context of the Fifth Epochal Revelation, but parse it as a three-layer cake. Looks like a very tasty cake, huh, Ann Biggs? Yeah, I'm ready to get some forks out and slice it up and pass it around to everybody. But there it is, a three-layer cake. And the top layer, if you will, being our global mission. And as we'll go through and talk together, what we see is that we have a global mission, that every epochal revelation has a mission that's global in scope. So there are a few different efforts that are, if you will, laser focused on that global mission. The Urantia Education Center, which we'll talk about a little later, Urantia Foundation with its books and translations, the Christ Experiment, something new that's emerging within our community. Jeanette Reed is leading that, and Pato and his work. So there's a number of different kinds of ministries that are going on here. And again, it's that suggestion that this revelation, every epochal revelation, has a global reach. So that's the first piece, or the first layer of the cake, the top layer, if you will, the higher vision, 80,000 foot. And then next is our community mission, which is educating ourselves and really becoming familiar with the inspiration, the wisdom of the text. And such a great job is being done by the UAI, by the UBIS, which George DuPont and Marta and so many others are helping to lead, Ralph Zaire, Betty, and the Urantia University Institute, Andre and Merritt and our dear sister Elizabeth, and the wonderful conferences and programs being put on by the Urantia Book Fellowship. And I want to say that there is something happening. The leadership of each of these organizations has sort of come together and suggested that we, if you will, move toward a quality of unity in our community through education, and that we have committed to each other to be co-sponsors and to help each other as we present these various community programs that have been unfolding for the last 70 years and will continue to unfold. And great work, as we'll see, is being done there. And then the last piece is the personal mission of revelatory education, which is the bottom layer of the cake. And this is really so important. This represents our commitment, our intention to be transformed by the vision of this revelation. And that requires us each in our own way to take responsibility for that self-transformation and to engage others. And so, as many of you know, we've been doing retreats over the years, and I encourage practice circles. I'm involved with 2 practice circles where my dear sister Bobby Dreyer and Marta and Carol Schindler and I get together on a weekly basis, and we engage in a half hour of worship together. There's a little bit of visiting. It's primarily intended to be a practice of transformation. So if you will, this is what I'm offering to you this morning, a vision which suggests 3 layers: a global mission, a community mission, and a personal mission. And by the way, if you, as we go along, if you have any questions, and Jeannie will, if you would do me a great favor and write those down, and we'll take an intermission and talk about those questions as we get to various segues in this presentation. So what we learn is only 2 influences can modify and uplift the dogmas of natural religion. The pressure of the slowly advancing wars and the periodic illumination of epochal revelation. So we again, in this small community, are privileged to be the recipients of this epochal revelation. And with a great gift comes a great responsibility. And so, as I will share at the end, I hope we will all, in our own ways, double down on that responsibility. So we read from our text, it is the mission of Revelation to sort and censor the successive religions of evolution. But if Revelation is to exalt and upstep the religions of evolution, then must such divine visitations portray teachings which are not too far removed from the thought and reactions of the age in which they are presented. Thus must and does Revelation always keep in touch with evolution. And what a fool I was early on when I had the book. I turned to my dear sister, my older sister, and I gave her a copy of the book. And I told her, I said, this is the only book you're going to need. You just need this one. Well, silly me. What you realize very quickly is, again, Revelation must in some fashion keep in touch with evolutionary thought. And so again, there is so much going on right now in the fields of neuroscience and neurobiology and psychology and positive psychology. So much going on that really relates to this revelation. And as we think about how we present this revelation to others, my dear friend Jeff Waddles and I were privileged back in the 80s to be part of a ministry, a worldwide ministry, to really share the teachings of the Urantia book without the Urantia book per se. So we must in some fashion learn to be adept at translating the truths of the revelation into the truths of evolutionary thought and vice versa. And I think, as we'll see, this is exactly how each of these epochal revelations have manifested. So thus did the previous epochal revelations portray teachings not too far removed from the thought and reactions of the age in which they are presented. I'm sure all of us on the screen have sort of wondered at Jesus and at Melchizedek, this master teaching son, and the quality and the quantity of knowledge that Macaventa had. And yet he kept his message so very simple and so very focused. And so I think in a certain sense, must we. We could be talking about a lot of things given the knowledge that we've been given in this revelation. But there are certain key themes which from the first paper to the last paper resonate again and again and again. And so as we engage our community education, it's for each of us to really distill and discern what those primary themes are and how we begin to translate that into the language of the culture that we find ourselves in. So we know the planetary prince schools. So the prince's corporeal staff early, and I'm going to actually ask, Anne, would you read this one?
Sure. The Prince's corporeal staff early organized the planetary schools of training and culture, wherein the cream of the evolutionary races are instructed and then sent forth to teach these better ways to their people. These schools of the Prince are located at the material headquarters of the planet.
Great, thank you so much, Anne. And so we're all familiar with this passage, and we know about these schools of training and culture. And culture. I think a big part of what we all have to learn is the quality of culture, the diversity of culture on this planet. And my friend Claire and Marilyn Kulicki and Marta Elders and others brought a cultural symposium to Urantia Foundation last year, which was extraordinary. And we learned, right, Gaetan, that we're not all the same. We have very different cultures, and we need to learn. As a young man, I was a surfer, and we need to learn how to surf, if you will, the wave of that cultural energy in a way that harmonizes and brings together an appreciation and a celebration of the diversity of culture. So again, the idea, these schools of training in which we bring people and we share with them on a personal basis, in the best way we know how, the cream and the gems of this epochal revelation. I love this image. You can see the fruits of the Spirit as the fruits all over the trees and the two angels. Boy, Google's really helped us with images, hasn't it? And so Gaetan, if you would read this one.
Yeah, sure. Global mission of revelatory education. The schools of the planetary prince are primarily concerned with philosophy, religion, morals, and the higher intellectual and artistic achievements. The Garden School of Adam and Eve are usually devoted to practical arts, fundamental intellectual training, social culture, economic development, trade relations, physical efficiency, and civil government.
Yeah. So what we see as we think about these schools, the first two epochal revelations, is that religion and philosophy were certainly a very high priority, but we've been given a lot in this revelation. We've been given a lot of understanding around art, around government, around a lot of different fields of endeavor, around the sciences, around trade relations, economic development. We've been given a lot of information. And again, as we can begin to tie that into evolutionary thought and bring it back, I think something great begins to emerge. So let's go on here. And Dawn, are you able to read this next one? You're on mute there, Dawn. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. You're talking to me, is that right, Gard?
Sure.
Okay. The Urantia peoples are suffering from a consequence of double deprivation of helping the task of the progressive planetary spiritual attainment. The Calicastia upheaval precipitated worldwide confusion and robbed all subsequent generations of moral assistance which well-ordered society would have provided. But even more dangerous are the endemic default and the deprivation of the races of the superior type of physical nature, which would have been more consistent with the spiritual aspirations.
Thank you, Don. Thank you. And again, you know, we could take a moment to just take a look at that image and get a sense of that image. And there is a sense of pandemic there, isn't there? There is a sense of crushing defeat. There is a sense of being overwhelmed. And yet, underneath that cloud, underneath that dark cloud, a huge silver lining. The silver lining that this becomes the planet that our Creator Son comes to visit. This becomes a significant planet, I think, with respect to evolutionary destiny, especially as the phenalators begin to move into the outer space levels. So we have been extraordinarily blessed by the disaster of the first two epochal revelations. Not to downplay or diminish the results of those defaults and that rebellion and the devastation of so many generations and the needless violence. But in this moment, in that moment, can we rise above? Can we look above and see the opportunity that presents itself? And it's an extraordinary opportunity, an extraordinary opportunity. So, and I see, Marta, are you able to read from where you are?
I can't, Gard, because I'm on the phone and it's too little.
Oh, okay. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
John,
Hello?
could you read this one?
That was me, you said?
Yes. Well, John Hales, sure.
Global mission of revelatory education. With the passing of a decade, Melchizedek organized his schools at Salem, patterning them on the golden system which had been developed by the early Sethite priests of the second Eden.
Thank you so much, John. And John, do you know who the artist was on this? I think it was Van Dyck, but one of those Danish Netherland types, yeah? It's amazing how Melchizedek kind of looks a little Danish, a little Dutch. But here we have Melchizedek and Abraham. And we have, again, an extraordinary moment. And what we all know from our reading of the text is that out of this revelation comes what we now call the axial age. All the major religious traditions, if you will, are sort of set and begin to manifest themselves in India and China and in the West. And we are the beneficiaries of that. And I want to suggest we're in a moment of transition. And I think the epochal revelation of the Urantia book will be a major catalyst or enzyme in that transformation. And I want to suggest to you the image that we're moving from an age of independence to an age of interdependence, where the, if you will, the walls of Jericho that once established this is Islam and that is Judaism and this is Christianity and that is Buddhism and this is Hinduism are beginning to come down. I'm observing this on a global basis. And then my dear friend, Jeff Wattles, would you do us the honor of reading this one if you're able to? Jeff, are you there? Okay, I'm going to turn to Marilyn.
I've just unmuted.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
Peter continued in general charge of the apostolic activities. Peter was in full charge of the school of the evangelists. The apostles all did their share in teaching groups of evangelists each forenoon, and both teachers and pupils taught the people during the afternoons. After the evening meal 5 nights a week, the apostles conducted the question classes for the benefit of the evangelists. Once a week, Jesus presided at this question hour, answering the holdover questions from the previous sessions.
I don't know, Brother Jeff, but the holdover questions may have been above the head of the apostles, and maybe that's why Jesus got to answer them. What do you think? We call them parking lot questions. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you. And Jeff, as we all know, has really kind of led the charge on the call to evangelism within our community and within his class and outside of his classes. He has continued to encourage all of us to really think more and focus more on the global mission and vision of this revelation. So, Jeff, thank you very much. And boy, what we see here, and we're not going to read it all, but we see that certain virtues were associated with this school of evangelists. So consecrated devotion, to pray always for more laborers, right? And I ask all of us on the screen today and listening to think about how we can double down on our own consecration to evangelism and to sharing in our own way. As Rodan said, there are many ways to share the gospel, many ways to share truth, and in our own way to answer the call, here am I, send me. And then courage, recognizing, as we learn from the Beatitudes, right? Those who would be peacemakers, right? I'm always kind of taken aback when I read that Beatitude, because right after Jesus says twice, you're going to be persecuted and you're going to be reviled, right? So it takes a little bit of courage to go out there and share these truths with folks. So again, my own personal experience is that courage emanates from my personal communion with the indwelling Spirit. And then we're given the first two pieces of the definition of religion. The book twice defines religion as faith, trust, and I don't know who put it up on the screen, but one of you put assurance. This is the definition of religion, right? And faith, I encourage you to reread paper 140 and the Beatitudes as we learn from that paper. That is the sum and substance of Jesus's teaching on the nature of faith, both as an indwelling or an inner characteristic of our soul and as an outward manifestation or expression of our soul, which leads to a quality of trust. I ask my students, how many of you trust our political, economic, and religious institutions? And in the last many years, hundreds of students, I will say one has answered and said, yes, I trust my religious institution. He was a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ. But this generation coming up does not trust our institutions. This generation coming up has a lack of trust. There's been a breach of trust. And what we know is that trust is the bridge to assurance. It's the bridge to door number 2, to those qualities of the fruits of the Spirit. So reinstoring that quality of trust into this next generation, that is the call to our generation. And I think there are a few youth on the screen today, and I have a feeling you might resonate with this. And then zeal and initiative are enthusiasm. And I love the word intelligent enthusiasm, because sometimes we go out there and we say things, right? My stepmother used to say, what's on my brain is on my tongue. Sometimes we need to hold the tongue just a little bit. But this zeal and initiative, and again, enthusiasm coming from the word in theos, or God within, that's where it comes from. And also that's where the 7th adjutant mind spirit, wisdom, comes from, or that quality of intelligence, which allows us to know what to say and when to say it. And then without needing to say it, kindness and courtesy. Kindness and courtesy, graciousness. When we find ourselves in some fashion being anxious or fearful, or even, God forbid, angry, time to check those experiences at the door. My stepmother was an actress, and the head of the studio would tell her, when you walk through those gates, you leave all of that at the gate. And so when we enjoin this revelation in our own ministries, kindness and courtesy, graciousness can be the only approach toward others. And then ministry to the sick. And I want to say that, again, with this, Peter told them all, neglect not your daily worship. And so as we seek to share this revelation with others, it's really incumbent upon us to take seriously our daily communion with God, both in worship and in prayer. And I can't emphasize this enough. This has been the big lesson for me over the last 50 years. Without this quality of personal transformation, without this personal communion, our ability to be effective evangelists, our ability to teach within our community is diminished. So I wanted to share with those of you that haven't seen it, we have at Urantia Foundation 3 pieces of pottery. You'll look to the left, you'll see this one was found on Cyprus, and it's 3 concentric circles. There's 3 circles everywhere on this pot. And this reminds us of the second epochal revelation, the revelation of Adam and Eve. The one in the middle was found in Hebron, which was where Melchizedek made his home. And again, you see there are 3 concentric circles, which again, these artifacts give, at least in my imagination, and I believe it's true because we found so many of them, give evidence to the reality of these revelations. And then the one on the right was really a surprise when I discovered this one. Again, 3 concentric circles, 3 on the top layer, 3 on the bottom layer, and 3 behind. This was found in Bethlehem. And this was the home, as we know, where our Creator Son was born. So this epochal revelation, this work, this realization is real. It's a fact, as well as an ideal and a value. And as we know, these 3 circles represent the infinity, eternity, and universality of the Paradise Trinity, which for us on this planet can only be mystery, but we enter into that mystery through our worship and through our prayer experience. We have at Urantia Foundation a library, and I encourage any of you that have not been there to come and visit. And there we have many of the books that were utilized by the Revelatory Commission in the development of the revelation. And Melchizedek, as we know, the master teacher's son. So I want to share now at Urantia Foundation just a few pieces that I think some of you are aware of, but books and translations, over 800,000 books distributed since 1955. I remember the story that Richard Keeler used to tell the early days, and the first year there was the first printing, I believe, went out after about a year, and they thought, boy, this is going to be a curve just going up and up and up. And they sent letters out to world leaders, and they sent books to world leaders. In the 3rd year of distribution, does anybody know how many books were distributed? Marilyn, I know you know. How many books? Do you remember how many books were distributed in the 3rd year, Marilyn?
I thought maybe 1 or 2 or maybe 0.
It was 3 books.
All right, I was close.
You were close. Maybe that was a tip of the hat and wag of the tail to the Trinity, only 3. But again, what we recognize is that revelation is not easily assimilated into a culture. And so it is incumbent upon us who have hands and feet to be a part of that process. But since 55, 800,000 books, 480 English, 320,000 translated books, most of which I believe, if George is on the line, is Spanish, 20 translations completed, 5 translations in process. I remember back in 1998 when Mo and I first became trustees, I think we had 3 or 4 translations at that point. So again, you can see great work is being done, but we need to expand, if you will, our study group circumference. Where there are translations emerging, like in China, and we still have our focus on a Japanese translation, we need to encourage and develop study groups in those cultures and in those countries. And as I said earlier, last year, Cultural Symposium was a magnificent event, helping us to appreciate the diversity. And what we don't take into account, and what we don't really know the effect of, is all the downloads. So just last year alone, 88,000 downloads of the book. That's just from Urantia Foundation site. So Urantia Book Fellowship has its piece, and again, so many hundreds of thousands. So there is a ripple effect occurring here, and it's extraordinary. So coming back, right? So we've talked just a little bit about the global mission. And again, there are a number of different projects. And again, Jeff, forgive me, I forgot to include your project here, but Jeff and his group and the Christ Experiment and Urantia Foundation and the Urantia Education Center. David Kulicki, are you on the line, and can you unmute and talk for a moment about the Urantia Education Center, which is an exploratory group of individuals looking at our global mission. David?
Yes, Gard is speaking of it in the third person, but he is integral to this effort. It's not surprising that we have something which is a combination of a number of different efforts. It takes all to the second paragraph of the foreword to hear that one of the primary objects of what we're doing is to expand cosmic consciousness and enhance spiritual perception. And from there on, I have counted about 150 pages of quotes about this topic throughout the book. When you put each individual quote together. And it's also not surprising that when we have this common and meaningful objective, that we have a tremendous amount of appreciation for each other and working together. And I think Gard and I are proud that one of the leading focuses of bringing people together from the different organizations has been education. In the last 10 or 15 years, there have been, I've lost track now. It's so many different times we've worked together. And one of those was Marilyn and Gard and I looked back at the Urantia Brotherhood School, which ran for about 20 years at 533 Diversey and was run by the then Brotherhood Education Committee. And I've looked through the archives, and every single chair of that committee, and I would imagine many others, have wondered, how can we bring this to the world? And many of our efforts together have been, yes, continue to try to educate within the Urantia book community about the Urantia book, but also to bring the teachings to the rest of the world. We've had seminars on that topic. So the three of us started talking about this and began an endeavor to try to do some of the same things that the earlier revelations did, which is bring people in, create. Marilyn's big passion for this is to create something that will be viewed outside of the Urantia culture and larger in the world to give us some credibility within education. We went through a number of wonderful acronyms, mostly to try to get Mo mad about them. What was the best one? The Center for Urantia Learning and Teaching, which came out cult. But that's made.
One was ICUS, right? That didn't work.
So we came up with UEC. That was because Chris Wood suggested that we come up with something you can't turn into a word. There are many people on the screen that I have had wonderful opportunity to learn from, working together. And as you all know, when you work on a true objective together, you become the best friends people possibly can be on this planet. So we have started the Urantia Education Center, which is supposed to work complementarily with everything else that's going on. And we're hoping, I've been saying this for a while, we're hoping that next year we will start bringing people in from all over the world for 1 week in August. And then after that, it'll be online classes to try to help develop ambassadors to the rest of the world with the best possible education in the Urantia book that they can have, to work with people both within the movement and outside the movement, just with the teachings themselves. And we've put a lot of time in there. We mostly, I think, from the amazing Elizabeth Callahan, and we have people from just about every organization that we can, and we're working hard. And the virus kind of got in the way this year, but pretty soon we're going to be bringing people in, many of them young, and sending them back out there and saying, go develop your part of the world. And I want to thank everybody that I've been able to work with on this.
Thank you so much, David. And again, it's an experiment in education. We'll be beta testing it over the next year, and we'll see where it goes. And it will hopefully be something akin to and have the flavor of what the previous epochal revelations. The only difference, right? Let's see, the planetary prince schools had the planetary prince. Adam and Eve schools had the Adam and Eve. Melchizedek schools had Melchizedek. Jesus was there for the fourth epochal revelation. But as Bill Sadler Jr. said after the last transmission about the publication of the book, I guess we're on our own at this point. So here we are, a humble community, and we're going to do the best we can around this ambition. And then, so what we recognize here is this next piece is that we have a community mission. And the community mission is really to help each other, as we've been doing over the many years, to understand the impact and the importance of this revelation. I was so impressed by a Dutchman named Henry Begeman when he would come into study group and he would say, we need to slow it down. Each word was chosen. Each paragraph comes before the next paragraph for a reason. And we need to explore the meanings of that. We need to understand why the revelators really teed it up in this fashion. So this community mission is really quite important. And what we've seen over the years is many, many conferences. And I don't know if Sean's on board. Sean, are you here? Or Matab or Jeff? Thies, are you on board? But this is a picture of the Yayas. And there's our Angela Thurston and so many of our friends at the joint conference, a united conference that was held in San Antonio, which I know many of you were at. And then the Anzura study group. And then the virtual study groups, right? This is Chicago, right? And I think everybody there is pretty much Chicago, except for that guy in the lower right, Marvin, who I think is on the line as well, and Joanne, who's now living in Georgia. But it's lovely because the virtual study groups have helped us to bridge this current crisis that we're in. And then we have these different programs like Symmetry of Soul with Ann Garner, inspired in the early days, and which is being carried on by her son, Brad Garner, and Kermit Anderson, James Woodward, and Chris Halverson, and so many wonderful people within our community doing such a great job at weaving together the themes associated with the revelation. And then Cosmic Citizen, which is actually, Andre texted me, said, I can't be with you because we're doing Cosmic Citizen this morning. And it's a wonderful program. If you haven't listened to it, I encourage you to listen. And so what we know from the recent survey in the study group directory, 481 total study groups. Now what we can say is that's what's recorded, and kind of like the pandemic, right? A certain number of cases have been recorded, but we know that it is probably a much higher number. And then we say 405 in person and 138 virtual. Now, I spent 25 years as a CPA, John Hales, and when I added those numbers, I didn't come up to 481. And I was a little frustrated. So I reached out to Joanne Strobel, who I think's on the line, and Joanne said, well, some are a combination. So yeah, bear with us in our math here, but some are a combination, sometimes in person and sometimes virtual, but we can probably say the number of virtual study groups has gone up dramatically over the last 3 or 4 months. I know it has in our area. And there you see in US total, 253. And what's really encouraging is the international total, 228. The international total used to be a much smaller number, but over the last decade has really gone up. And I want to give thanks to the UBIS for its influence with respect to that, because out of the UBIS classes have emerged study groups globally. And I want to give thanks also to George DuPont and Marilyn Kulicki and the translation team, whereby, again, 20 completed translations, and those translations literally translate into study groups. What's also exciting is the countries. So 58 out of 194 countries in the world have study groups. That's really exciting. And with respect to UBIS, an even larger number of people have attended courses from those 194 countries. So here we are. The primary course is in English. This is a rundown of 2019, 20 in English, 10 in Spanish, 9 in French, and 1 in Portuguese. 40 courses were taught last year, which is extraordinary. And if I have the wherewithal to do it, I would do my hand clapping right now and say thank you to the UBIS team for your magnificent work. There you see 85 of 194 countries have attended courses. And what's really exciting is in 2023, Indonesian as a course will come online, as well as Poland. And then in 2026, after we have the completion of the Chinese translation, we will have that in courses, and German and Farsi, which is Persia. And then in 2029, Russian and Hebrew, which the Hebrew is coming online even as we speak. I believe I saw my friend Gabriel online, and he has been working very hard on the Hebrew translation. And then UUI, 3,500 people a month have visited the site, 7 courses per year, really fantastic courses. If you've not taken a UUI course, I encourage you to. What excites me about the UUI courses is they're constantly innovating. And the most recent one that Elizabeth and Marvin are teaching is a new reader course, which has been tremendously successful. And I think it's really important for us to have an on-ramp for new readers of the text. And Elizabeth and Marvin have been doing that, as well as some courses in English with the Korean readers, which is really good. I don't know if you know, but we have a number of Korean translations. I don't know what the number is. Anybody? George, are you on the line? How many Korean translations? 6? I heard 8 from somebody, but Korea tends to be a bit of a feisty culture temperamentally. And what these kinds of courses that UUI are teaching and UBIS is doing is helping to bring people together. And so again, tip of the hat, wag of the tail to UUI and UBIS for its great work. And then we want to just say thank you to the Urantia Association International. As many of you online now know, we've had 2 of these 24-hour online courses. And I don't know about you, but for me, they were both fantastic. I didn't make the whole 24 hours. At this age, can't do that, but I was there for a good part of it. And I know many of you enjoyed it as I did. And I want to, again, especially honor Chris and Wood and his vision for creating this in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic. So it's been a tremendous thing. And I know there are more on the drawing boards. And David, you have something coming up through the Urantia Book Fellowship. Do you want to share anything about that, if you would?
Well, we've been really, and we're going to continue to do it once we are able to leave our house, trying to emphasize community support. And so even as we're going forward in this age of Zoom and other web presences, we've been going around visiting study groups and visiting conferences and doing presentations like that. The next one that was scheduled is in Kansas City at the end of this month, May 30th. But it's going to be, I think, hybrid between people being there, for whom I'm a little nervous. And Marilyn and I are going to do a presentation we've been doing a couple times called Personality Integration on May 30th. So I hope we'll be able to get that out so that everybody who wants to see that can. It's, I think, a really important topic in the book. And then later in June, I'm expecting that we will be doing the first of maybe bi-monthly workshops, and this will be one we've done before, which is the first one will be the 12 Apostles. And again, we'll put things out there for people to know how to get into it.
Great. And we will, the great news, as David shared earlier, is that the foundation and the fellowship and Urantia Association and UUI have been working together on these projects and really helping to, if you will, share the wonderful programs that are going on. And that the last one, for those of you that were there, you saw Mo Siegel and Jeff Thies and Chris Wood coming online and sharing their visions for the future of the Urantia community, which was really, really quite wonderful to see the 3 presidents. And as you probably know, they cavort periodically. I think once a quarter, they get together and just talk about how things are going. So we are moving in the right direction, and it's really exciting to see that happening. And then the last piece of the 3-layer cake is the personal mission, which I regard as the most important. It is foundational. The other 2 layers really don't work without that first piece. And so that really is our own personal responsibility for allowing this revelation to transform us by virtue of its wisdom and its guidance. And so I always take solace in this sentence, which suggests that the sum and substance of Jesus's religion was the worship of God and the service of man. And I sort of judge myself on that basis. How is that daily communion going? As Peter said, don't neglect it. And my teacher, Thomas Keating, always used to say, once a day for maintenance, twice a day for improvement. So if you can take 20 or 30 minutes in the morning and 20, 30 minutes in the evening, you will be surprised. I had one student write her research paper on the effects of meditation in her own personal life, and it brought me to tears. Because at the beginning of the semester, she had no idea what meditation was. By the end of the semester, she says, my diet is better. I'm exercising again. I actually like myself, and I'm doing things in the community. This is where worship takes us, into the community. So we have that vertical dimension of our journey, which is the depth of our communion with the divine spirit indwelling each of us. And we know the Trinity, in fact, dwells within each of us. And then out of that vertical dimension, the horizontal dimension, which is our engagement, not just with our Urantia community. Jesus calls us not just to the brotherhood of believers, but to the larger community. What is the service that we're engaged in? I know Guy and Agnes are doing wonderful work in the prisons there in the Netherlands. And again, how are we engaged in our communities to manifest and in our own way to share, if you will, the evangelical mission or vision of the revelation? So our own free clinic in Southern Nevada, we actually have the acronym, the values acronym. This is our values proposition. TRUST, spells trust. And we say the T is for teamwork, the R is for respect for every person, both within the staff and who come across the threshold of our clinic and in our community. And the U is unity and urgency, because the people who come across our threshold are very sick. And then service with excellence. And the last T is transparency. These are the components which for us lead to a quality of compassion in the way in which we engage our activity there at Volunteers in Medicine. So again, as we say, if we keep our eye on the ball, and I believe this is the ball that Jesus gave us, worship and service, we're going to be doing pretty well, I think. And this was the line that Vinnie Ventola, a fellow who was part of the movement many years ago, and some of you remember he was a great artist. We have some of his artwork at Urantia Foundation, but he was the one who really was beating the drum on worship and the importance of worship. And he shared this quote early on in my education, and I've been screaming it from the housetops ever since. Worship makes one increasingly like the being who is worshipped. And the great mandate of the universe, as we know, is to be you perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. So this is what Peter was telling the evangelists. This is what, across the centuries, Peter is telling us, and what Jesus is telling us. So what we know in the personal mission of the revelatory education is, yes, worship and service, but also schools of thinking, schools of feeling, and schools of doing. Kurt, can you read this one?
On the mansion world, such schools are organized in 3 general groups of 100 divisions each. Schools of thinking, the schools of feeling, and the schools of doing. Those things which you might have learned on earth, but which you failed to learn, must be acquired under the tutelage of these faithful and patient teachers. There are no royal roads, shortcuts, or easy paths to paradise. One of the purposes of the Urantia career is to effect the permanent eradication from the mortal survivors of such animal vestigial traits as procrastination, equivocation, insincerity, problem avoidance, unfairness, and ease-seeking.
Kurt, thank you so much. And again, as we think about our personal mission, imagine if we were personally to say, well, I'm going to work on that procrastination. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram world, but I'm a 9 in the Enneagram world, and Marilyn Kulicki is too. And we like to procrastinate. We like to say, well, there's always tomorrow. And I've been learning, right, that that doesn't work, right? And so all of these issues which we deal with down here, whether it's fear or anxiety or even anger. And I've had a hard time trying to convince people that anger in its unleashed and unharnessed expression is not a very healthy emotion. And in fact, it does terrible things to the body as well as to the mind, as well as to the spirit. I believe spirit poison is the word. And so can we learn when those things come up in our awareness? Can we learn a quality of mindfulness that allows us to short circuit the effect and power of those, what I call not the fruits of the spirit, but the weeds of the spirit? Can we cut those weeds out? Can we learn how to do that? And as we all know on the screen, right now there's a tremendous move towards social emotional learning in our educational systems. And here locally, we no longer have play in our curriculum. And I've been beating the drums with the superintendent and many others in our community to say, play is essential. And guess where I got that? From the Revelation, from the Revelation. So again, there are many things that we can be teaching each other as we walk down our separate paths or our connected paths, which will help us to ease, if you will, the patience of our teachers on high. And I love when they say faithful and patient, because I know sometimes it takes a great deal of patience. And when we read the inevitabilities, just a couple of them, right, is hope, the grandeur of trust. And so I'm going to ask Guy Perron, can you read these?
Sure. Is hope, the grandeur of trust, desirable? Then human existence, hold on, I'm going to move the, must constantly be confronted with insecurities and recurrent uncertainties. Uncertainty is the secret of contented continuity. Dis celle-là, Agnès? Okay. Is unselfishness, the spirit of self-forgetfulness, desirable? Then must mortal man live face to face with the incessant clamoring of an inescapable self for recognition and honor. Men could not dynamically choose the divine will if there was no self-like to forsake. Men could never lay saying hold on righteousness if there were no potential evil to exalt and differentiate the good by contrast.
Great. Guy, thank you so much. And again, what incredible lessons we get there. And again, sometimes we gloss over these pieces as we read in our study groups, but these are incredible lessons for each of us. You know, where is trust lacking in your personal experience? Where is trust lacking in your family? Where is trust lacking in your community, right? Our community, we're part of a network called Compassionate Cities Network. San Antonio, Seattle, Dallas, Atlanta, many cities have adopted compassion as a new filter, a new framework within which to make decisions. And so how do we begin to restore a civil politic? How do we begin to restore the kind of bipartisan angst that we all experience out there in the world? How can we begin to bring back a quality of respectful dialogue? These are the lessons, these are the inevitabilities, which we're going to learn in the mansion worlds. So why not here? Why not get our program moving here? And again, this unselfishness, spirit of self-forgetfulness. This is one we read, but I'm not sure we get because of that incessant clamoring of our egos, right? Incessant. So Sue, would you read this one? Can you read?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We have a lot of outside noise here, but if you can hear me, discouragement, worry, and indolence are positive evidence of moral immaturity. Why did you pick me for this one, Gard?
Your father took me on the shoulders.
The mature human being begins to look upon all other mortals with feelings of tenderness and with emotions of tolerance. Mature men view immature folks with the love and consideration that parents bear their children. It's beautiful.
Thank you, Sue. And again, in this moment of pandemic, we can witness all around us discouragement, worry, indolence. We can see these things, but we have the capacity, given this revelation, given what we know dwells within us, to really turn the tide, to really bring a groundswell of abounding love, matchless goodwill, and unfailing forgiveness. And I love this for Rodan, right? The mature human being begins to look not just on some other mortals, but all, right? That's an absolute, right, Dana? There's no equivocation about the word all. And so we can ask ourselves in our own interactions within our families, within our community, within our workplace, within our study groups, right? I've been to study groups where I've had migraine headaches because of the argumentation and the kind of ego battling that goes on in the study group. I don't know if any of you have had that experience, but shame on us, right? What text are we reading? So the opportunity here is magnificent. And Susan Myers, could you read this one?
Thank you, Gard. Successful living is nothing more or less than the art of the mastery of dependable techniques for solving common problems. The first step in the solution of any problem is to locate the difficulty, to isolate the problem, and frankly, to recognize its nature and gravity. The great mistake is that when life problems excite our profound fears, we refuse to recognize them. Likewise, when the acknowledgement of our difficulties entails the reduction of our long-cherished conceit, the admission of envy, or the abandonment of deep-seated prejudices, the average person prefers to cling to the old illusions of safety and to the long-cherished false feelings of security. Only a brave person is willing honestly to admit and fearlessly to face what a sincere and logical mind discovers.
Susan, thank you. Great to see you and Jeff. And again, one of my favorite quotes on the planet is this guy, William James. Dana, I'm going to let you read this quote by William James.
A great many people think they are thinking when they are merely rearranging their prejudices.
Okay, how many of you, you can do on the reaction down to bottom, how many of you are busted? Huh? No, I can't get to my reaction, but go ahead and raise your hand or your thumbs if you are busted on that one. We are all filtered by our family of origin experiences, by our experiences along the path, by the quality of trauma that's informed our journey. And we run a camp called Camp Anytown here in Southern Nevada through our Interfaith Council. And we take about 70 or 80 kids up to a camp in the mountains. And over 3 days, the first thing they learn when they come in is we ask, do you have any prejudices? And virtually all of them say no. And by the end of the first day, they all go, busted, tremendous prejudices. And in fact, the director of our camp, Rico Ocampo, who's a wonderful soul, but came in at 17 years old saying, I ain't talking to the whites and I ain't talking to the blacks. I ain't talking to anybody that ain't Hispanic. Now he's married to a Caucasian lady and he is the director of our camp. And what we do in 3 days is really release these kids from the enslavement of these prejudices, of these biases. And again, in neurobiology and neuroscience, as Marta knows, great work's been done on the inherent biases, both genetic and that we learn in our environment and culturally. And a big part of our educational program with ourselves is, as Carl Jung said, to withdraw the projections that we make upon others. And so again, William James, the father of American psychology and a big contributor to American philosophy, I think is spot on here. And let's see, David Henry, can you share this one?
Self-mastery. At one of the evening conferences, Andrew asked Jesus, "Master, are we to practice self-denial as John taught us, or are we to strive for the self-control of your teaching? Wherein does your teaching differ from that of John?" Jesus answered, "John indeed taught you the way of righteousness in accordance with the light and laws of his fathers. And that was the religion of self-examination and self-denial. But I come with a new message of self-forgetfulness and self-control. I show to you the way of life, as revealed to me by my Father in heaven."
David, thank you so much. And again, sometimes we will read a passage like this and we don't get the impact, we don't get the power of it. So self-control comes out of self-forgetfulness. So I all want you to think about your ego right now. So Brent St. Dennis, I want you to think about your ego, and then I want you to stop thinking about your ego. Right? So I all want you to picture an elephant. Now I want you to stop thinking about that elephant, right? It ain't so easy, right? We're swimming in that fishbowl. And in contemplative work, we call it kenosis or ecstasy, which is getting out of yourself. And how do we get out of ourselves? Well, again, Jesus gives us the path, doesn't he? Worship and service. It's the only one that has ever come close for me, and I'm working on it every day. But that self-forgetfulness is not a function of reading your Urantia book. It's not a function of going to conferences. It's a function of my engagement with my family, with my community, with the larger body, and with the Father in heaven, and the infinite spirit, and the eternal spirit. So again, we're given this opportunity, and we're given this opportunity here. And again, I just think to yourself, I have a feeling many of us will look back and go, if only I had, right, during that short period of time I had down there on that planet, if only I had been a little more serious about this program of worship and service, if only I had been a little more engaged with this evangelistic impulse within me. You know, to use the famous words, I like to quote great philosophers like Clint Eastwood, "A man's got to know his limitations." And then the other great philosopher, right, Jeff Waddles, Marlon Brando, "I could have been a contender," right? we could have been a contender, right? We're given this incredible gift, and what are we going to do with it? So this is why this is the first layer of the cake. It was back in 1973 that I was in Westwood, Los Angeles, and Marvin was there, and a few others of you were there, and a fellow named Clyde Bedell got up. And among other things, he said, "I want to encourage you each to read every month, at least once a month, paper 140. He said, "I regard that as the most important paper in the whole book." Now, we've all got our favorites in the book, the thought adjuster papers, the religion papers, the first 5 papers. But paper 140 gives us the sermon on the ordination sermon. It gives us the essence of what faith is, and faith leads to trust, and trust leads to assurance. So again, this is what Jesus did. Jesus really encouraged his followers, and as we know the story of Judas, Judas forgot a few things in the program, and it led him down a troublous path. So Brent St. Dennis, my friend of many years ago and now, would you please read this?
Thank you, Gard, and all. That evening, Jesus talked at great length, trying to show the 12 what they must be, not what they must do. Jesus would reiterate, "In the kingdom, you must be righteous in order to do the work." Many times did he repeat, "Be you perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect." It was a difficult task to persuade these Galilean fishermen that in the kingdom, being righteous by faith must precede doing righteousness in the daily life of the mortals of earth.
And Brent, would you care to say anything about that passage?
Well, I guess the distinction between trying to understand what being means and actually trying to skip all the understanding just to the be, I guess is just the answer in the moment of what the Father's will is. And this is a very, very deep section that you've asked me to read, Gard.
Yes, yes. It's so good to hear your voice. It's so good to see you.
Thank
This
you.
is the last section of paper 140. So this is kind of like when you read Jesus's final prayers. These are the things that he asked for. And what did he ask for? He said, I want them to be one, even as you and I are one, Father. And as Brent just so beautifully said, this it's in the moment. It's in this moment. It's not something in the future. It's not something in the past. It's a quality of mindfulness in this present moment that allows us to step through the door of truth and beauty and goodness, of this new philosophy of living that my brother Jeff speaks of so often. And in my classes, I often ask my students, so think of Albert Einstein. Think of Albert Einstein. In my mind, he was a man of truth. He was so focused and dedicated. His very being was the passion for truth, not just scientific, but also philosophical and religious. He was a very religious man. And think of Michelangelo, right? His very being was beauty, right? All that time up there on those scaffolding in the Sistine Chapel, you had to be a person of beauty to want to do that. And think of Teresa of Calcutta, right? Think of Francis of Assisi. These are people who became good, who were beings of goodness. And so may we each find in our own way, what is that value or set of values which we can walk through the door and saturate ourselves with the quality of those values. That is the great gift of personal transformation. And out of that comes the fruits of the Spirit, the qualities of joy and peace and love. So I want to announce that Urantia Foundation, along with Urantia Book Fellowship, along with Urantia Association, is going to do a spiritual retreat online, July 11th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I encourage you to come. Retreats are very important. They give us a moment to pause. And in the tradition, right, of Judaism and Christianity, Sabbath is a very important tradition. But we've kind of lost that regard for Sabbath, for pausing, for really taking dedicated time to focus ourselves. So I'm encouraging people, I'm encouraging you during this time of being home, amplify, go from 2 to 3 times a day in which you engage communion with our Heavenly Father and the Creative Mother Spirit. So come join us. So this is the vision, right? We have been contacted. And we honor not just the Fifth Epochal Revelation, but we honor the creator of our universe by taking seriously the 3 dimensions of this revelation: the global mission, the community mission, and the personal mission that we're all a part of. It was on Thursday, I was speaking with the Chief Rabbi of Holland. His name is Abraham Sotendorp. It's a wonderful soul. It was in 1943, the age of 2, that he was thrown from a train that was on its way to Auschwitz into a field somewhere in France. And the farmers picked him up and they cared for him and they raised him. And the good rabbi said he would like us to suggest and to think about the years 2020 through 2030 as being the holy decade. And he was very humble about it. He said, all time is sacred. But in this next 10 years, humanity must engage in a way that it's never engaged before. The community of believers in the Fifth Epochal Revelation must engage in a way that it's never engaged before, because the clock is ticking. There are tipping points with respect to our environment. There are tipping points with respect to healthcare and our social equation. And these tipping points are coming dangerously close. So this decade is an opportunity for all of us, as I said earlier, to double down and to rededicate ourselves to the vision and the inspiration of this epochal revelation. And so I close with 2064. We are called to help transform the world with unfailing forgiveness, matchless goodwill, and abounding love. My wife and I, every morning, we pray that prayer that we want to go out as ambassadors of unfailing forgiveness and matchless goodwill and abounding love. And depending on our meditation, we usually get to about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But we're working on it. And I encourage each of you to work on it. This is the real education, coming from the word eduke, which means to lead out of. Lead out of what? A quality of ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of our true self, of our divine soul, of the destiny that awaits each of us. If we would but intentionally, each and every morning, commit ourselves to the Father who dwells within and to our wonderful creative Mother Spirit. And if we do, I suggest to you at some point along the way, you're going to get this, a smile from our Creator Son. And I don't know about you, Sue, but along with a smile from your dad, Paul, that smile from Jesus would just be the most wonderful thing ever I could imagine. And I think even as we walk this path, we can experience that smile even in the present moment, because he does smile upon us with matchless goodwill, abounding love, and unfailing forgiveness. So I think what we'll do now is we will take some, and I will unshare. We will take some comments. If anybody wants to raise their hand or has questions, please, chat room, I see, those are all the beginning. So if anybody has any questions or would like to make a brief comment, this would be the time to do it. Christina.
I have a question for you, Gard, about your idea of the angels of the churches handing over to the angels of progress by 2030.
Oh yeah, tell me what you think.
Well, I heard you say that, and I heard you say that the goal of the 2020 Urantia Global Experience should be, how do we help the angels of progress? So I just have been so excited ever since I heard you say that probably a year ago.
Yeah.
And so maybe you could do a whole webinar on that sometime, but maybe this was it.
No, I think absolutely. I think we need to talk about the angels of progress, the angels of healthcare. You know, my wife and I, we reach out to those who have no access, zero access to healthcare because they're not insured and they can't afford it. I don't know, but I think it's a little piece of the puzzle that the angels of healthcare are worried about. And so each of us in our own way can create an on-ramp. And so, Christina, you've been very involved in interfaith work and been to the parliaments, and you see what's going on there. You see that the Urantia revelation is finding its way into the thought stream of so many world leaders around the planet through those venues. And so again, I think not only the angels of the churches, but I think the angels of progress are there at those parliaments as well. And so how can we contribute, right? So I would suggest to any of you, and I know that David and I and Chris and Jeannie, and we'd be very interested if any of you want to do something on the planetary angels. That would be a wonderful program. So I encourage you to think about that during this time. Anybody else?
Sue Snyder.
Sue, yeah, sorry, I can't see if anybody can see who's got the panel.
I was going to share something when you were talking about the personal dimension of how we go about incorporating these things into our life that will elevate us and make us more perfect. And it was remarkable that you mentioned Henry Begeman today, because this insight came from him a long time ago. It was I was just privy to a conversation he was having in my house, and I was a child. But the discussion was how do we know the will of God? And he said, you don't, even if you don't know what, you do know how. So if you work on the how, the what will happen. And later in the study of the fruits of the Spirit, you know, we've had a study group where we split the list in half, and one side of it is the what and the other side is the how. So when I think about ways we could start to put some of the really insightful things you said today to work, I think about going back to that list, you know, merciful ministry. Well, ministry is the what, but merciful is the how. You know, unfailing goodness. Goodness is the what, but unfailing is the how. And I think if we work on the hows, those whats really get cleaner.
It's so true. It's a beautiful comment. Thank you, Sue.
I give it back to Henry Begeman because he was the birth of that insight.
Yeah, it's the unfailing that catches our attention, isn't it? We know forgiveness, of course, forgiveness, but the unfailing? Are you kidding me? So, lovely.
And my favorite is forgiving tolerance. Forgiving tolerance. You're not like you. You're not like me. I forgive you.
Yes. Yes. So I see Gaetan's
That's a
hand.
joke.
Yeah, I see Gaetan's hand is raised.
Yeah, well, thank you, Gard, for this presentation on education. And well, it's a very important subject, especially to dedicated Urantia book students. At the beginning of your presentation, you show some number about study groups. Well, I know they are more than the one listed in the directory, but this was a good effort to maybe centralize the information. And I think what you just said about education, I would emphasize that to have good hosts of study group, those hosts need to become good teachers. And too often we see people starting study group with no knowledge of how to teach. And I would encourage all hosts of study group to take UBIS course, Urantia University courses, Christ Experiment courses, or whatever other courses that are offered out there. You don't need to take all of them, but at least educate ourselves. That's the main purpose. Be what you want to teach. And just like you said, you know, I think I always say, carry the message in yourself that you want to teach. And this is how you become a good teacher. So thanks for pointing out study groups, education, initiative from all those association or group out there. Thank you very much.
Gaetan, could you speak a word about the Christ Experiment? Because I know you've been involved with that, and it's probably new to some ears. I think you were profoundly affected by what Jeanette and the team was doing there.
Well, I heard at first from my wife, she was involved with it, and then she started showing me, you know, the curriculum of the course, and always being interested in how Jesus taught. I remember when I was president of UAI, I asked the education committee chair to look for, you know, to write an article about how to teach the way that Jesus was teaching. So when I read the curriculum of what they were teaching, to make the bridge between the Bible, and I know that in America, there's a lot of people believing in the Bible, and how do we bring Christian to the Urantia book? You know, we even where I live, where we have this problem sometime when we meet Christian that are very devoted to the Bible itself. So when I took the course, you know what came about? A greater love for Jesus. Because when I found the book, Jesus was not what I was looking for. I was looking for answers to all the problems of the world, and the Urantia book provides such answer. And I was never fully focused, even if I knew that Jesus showed us many things, but it was not my main focus. But as soon as I took those courses and I learned a little bit more and more and more about how Jesus was teaching and how to bridge previous revelation to the actual this revelation, I was really in. And I took the whole course. And I would invite anyone that wants to become a better teacher to take any kind of course, or even to take this course, because it teaches you a lot about to bridge, about to amplify truth in the other's belief, and how to start uplifted conversation, I would say, and how to bridge, Bible to the revelation of the Urantia book.
Great. Thank you so much, Gaetan. And I see Kurt has your hand raised.
Yeah, I wanted to promote something that I ran into about 20 years ago that are called Living the Teachings groups, that are kind of a group that Larry Mullins and Joan Mullins started. And very simple. It's basically spiritual self-help groups that we get together, a small group of friends. They can come out of study groups, or they can, well, I guess they can be online, to get together and talk about our spiritual lives and to support each other in building a daily practice and having an accountability group that you can kind of go to help you keep on track and get started on building these habits. I think they're really good. Thank you.
Kurt, that's a wonderful idea. And if anybody wants to join one, reach out to Kurt Sira. Kurt's going to put his email address on, and he's going to start one. We have one, Marta and Bobby and Carol Schindler and I, and it's a wonderful thing. It's practice groups, or Parker Palmer calls it circles of trust, right? Where we create a deeper level of intimacy. And yes, there's a little bit of inspiration from the revelation, but it's really just to check in and see how the fruits are going, right, Kurt? Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to now, I think I can, give you your final examination. So everybody, you are now in what is called Mentimeter. I want you to, if you have your computer in front of you, go ahead to menti.com and enter that code and give us a rating. This would be very helpful to Jeannie and to myself and to David and to all those involved in education. Give us a rating. We've got a few questions here, and we'll get through this before the 11 o'clock hour, but you see the code up there, 814123. Just put that in there when you're asked, and then go ahead and give us a rating, and we'll see that bars go up as you put in your ratings. Is that you, Hara? Good to see you.
You're going to have to unshare in order to give us access to our, to our computers.
Oh, you know what? That's a very good point. But
Actually,
Gard,
Jeff, you just press escape, and then
Yeah.
you'll have access to your computer.
Okay, thank you very much.
no, you can do exit full screen.
yeah, and then you go back to Zoom when you want to come back.
Okay, I got that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, we've got a neck and neck between excellent and good. We'll see if anybody got up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. Not so good. Uh-oh, there goes excellent. We'll give this a couple more minutes and then we'll go on to the next one.
Because how do you read over? Good.
Isn't this fun? I know Marilyn Kulicki likes this kind of stuff. I saw this last week and I just fell in love with it. So again, forgive me, all right? Unfailing forgiveness, right, Susan? You are the test group on this one. Uh-oh, okay, not so good. That's good, good feedback. And again, if you want to send any comments, please send them to myself or to David or to Jeannie, to Chris, any of us, on how we might improve. The old adage in the Urantia book, unasked for advice, we're asking for your advice. So this is good. So I'm going to go on now, and I'm going to go to the next question. Provide one word that describes how you feel about your thought adjuster. All right, let's go for it. The code is 814123.
One word.
One word. So this is word cloud. I know you love these too as well, Marilyn, right?
C'est beau, ça fait tout de suite un... C'est beau, hein?
Ah, Papa, I love it.
Oh, that's very nice how it built.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, please. Menti.com. Awesome. I love it. Betrothed. That's a lovely word, betrothed. It is true. Whoa. Okay. That is gorgeous. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any more? I'm going to give you another few minutes here, a couple minutes. Ann Garner, are you watching this?
I love it.
Isn't that great?
Oh man. Talk about virtual reality.
Yeah, yeah. You like that, Jody? Beautiful.
Gard, I would like to read one sentence before you leave, please.
Yeah, please read it while the words are coming up.
You've been discussing, of course, the thing about the inner life, you know, to be in order to do.
Right.
Paper 111, section 5, the consecration of choice.
Oh, yeah.
The doing of the will of God is nothing more or less than an exhibition of creature willingness to share the inner life with God.
And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And look at that word that's, I think, been doubled up on, elusive. Isn't that interesting, Elizabeth? Elusive, right? Thought gesture is a little elusive, huh? And so as we share the inner life, perhaps we get an opportunity to create a little more intimacy and a little more of what's called amazing. So how would you rate our global outreach with the revelation? Go ahead and check in there. You see 814123 again, the code. Our global outreach.
What do you mean by we, Gard? Can you just clarify?
How would you rate?
Okay, you said how do we rate our global outreach?
Yeah, how are we doing as a community in global outreach, Victor?
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Are we be doing better? And by the way, your responses will be recorded, and I will send them to the respective groups, and anybody that would like them, please reach out to me and I'll send them to you. But I think this is good information. This is good data. And again, what we see here is we could be doing better, right? We're okay. But if we're stepping into the Holy Decade, right, Christina? We're stepping into this incredible period of transformation. Maybe we need to double down or triple down. So provide one word on how the Urantia book has affected you. 814123. Purpose, transform. Wow, look at this, everything. Wow, do we love our book or what? Balanced, intensified, peace, illumination, transformative, lovely. Isn't this fun? Elizabeth, are you enjoying this? I know you like these kinds of things. Okay.
I like discovering new tools, you know, for connecting and learning.
Exactly.
And like Ann said, I like the fact that this is it's dynamic. It's happening right now. We're sharing what we're thinking and feeling.
Well, it's what Brent St. Dennis said. It's in the moment that meeting occurs, right? And you know this as a former Buddhist monk. It's in this moment as we read these words, something inside of us resonates, right? The reality response. Wow, this is great. Swallowed. Ooh, that's powerful. Fulfilled. Certainty, right? Certainty amidst uncertainty. Boy, isn't that characteristic of our current moment? Guided. Okay, So your test is almost over. So how would you rate our community education outreach? And that is, we're talking about UBIS, we're talking about our conferencing, we're talking about all the things that we do, study groups, so on and so forth. Okay, good. Excellent. All right. That was fun. Okay. Lovely. So again, we see some aspiration here. For 7 of you, it's okay. We're doing okay, but we could be doing better. And we know that, right? That's the creative tension of supremacy. It's a good thing. We're not going to deny it, right, Dana? We're going to always reach for more. Huh? So this is lovely. Thank you for these responses. This is very, very helpful. Now, one word that expresses your admiration for our angels. Susan's on to this one.
Oh, yes. Thank you for this.
Love, gratitude, total grateful. Wow. Only good can come from our efforts to love our angels, right? They're there. Some of you were on the program when we talked about the planetary angels during the UAI gathering. And at least in 1934, as many or more angels than there are mortals on the planet. I don't know what the numbers are today. None of us do. But a lot of angels on the planet. Look at that. Compassion, guidelines, excited. Wow. I'm having a spiritual experience. I don't know about you guys. This is terrific. Love, love. That's the big word. Gratitude, grateful. So, we take this moment to just tell our angels, our unseen helpers, we're surrendering to the will of God in this moment, and we're asking for your help. We're asking for your help, your wisdom, your guidance. Help us each to be a blessing, right, in this work that we're doing. So thank you all for that. Okay, we're just about there. And now, how would you rate our educational endeavors around personal transformation? Do we need more retreats? Do we need more? Okay is in there. Good. Oh, good went away. Good came back. Good's getting better. Okay. Again, we don't have 1,000 people doing this, but what we're seeing is we could be doing better, right? So those of you on the executive committee, those of you on the ISB, those of us that are trustees and associate trustees, 3, not so good, right? We could be doing a whole lot better here. This is really valuable information for all of us, right? So thank you for those responses. 12, okay. Everybody seeing what I'm seeing? Jeff, are you seeing this? Yeah. This is stuff we need to take back, and we need to figure out how to do this better, right? Okay, now, what do you regard as the key educational priorities? I think there's a ranking opportunity. Take a look, and this is a barcode, 814123. The key education priorities right now. So what should we be putting more focus on? Oh, there goes personal transformation. Okay, community educational outreach. Global educational outreach. Okay, this is very good information. So we have a neck and neck between global and community, but personal is ahead by a head, right, at the wire. And well, there we go. And this should tell us something. So those of us, again, involved in education, those of us wanting to get involved, and I encourage all of us to get involved, more involved with education. This is what's going to really lead the Holy Decade in our communities, in our schools, in our families, right? The encouragement of this personal transformation. Again, once a day for maintenance, twice a day for improvement, and during this pandemic, maybe even 3 times or 4 on the weekends. Okay, this is very helpful information. I want to thank all of you for your responses here. This is going to be very valuable. And I want just a sort of ending up here, a one-word check-in on how you're feeling right now. Ah, blessed. Relaxed. Tired. Yeah. Joyful. Gratified. At peace. Hungry for life. Hopeful. Hopeful. Hopeful is getting big. Grateful is getting big. Tired's getting big. I'm doing what my father used to tell me he did at my age. Get the morning nap out of the way, right? Okay, this is really good, really good. Happy, fraternal. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I remember my teacher, Thomas Keating, one of his students came to him and was really sort of sharing some misery and woe. And after a few moments of a pause of silence, which was a little uncomfortable for the student, he said, wonderful, wonderful. Why? Because as Jesus said in the fifth beatitude, blessed are you when you mourn. Blessed are you when your heart is broken, because with a broken heart comes compassion. And with compassion, the sixth beatitude, comes the seventh beatitude, which is a quality of peacemaking, a willingness, as Ann Garner said earlier so beautifully, to share the inner life with God and to be more like God. So with that, I think I have one more. Yes. Namaste, shalom, salam, peace be with you. So we have a one more moment for any closing comments or inspirations, anything that's come up for you as a result.
Gard, this is Rick Warren.
Hey, Rick Warren, how are you, buddy?
Good, brother. Hi, everyone. I can use your help on a secondary work project, which is my educational endeavor. I'm writing 7 books that are all take stories from the Urantia book. I mean, you can give somebody a 2,100 page book and say, read this, but they're not going to. I mean, 99% of them are not. And I have taken the stories and put them in a 200 page format and made them all so that they lead into the UB. Took the Adam and Eve story, the Mansion World story. I've got a Melchizedek fictionalized biography coming out soon. I'm going to do one on the angels and the planetary prince, and that'll be 7. And if you can just spread the word, if you think people might be able to use these books as an intro to the UB, I'm getting a lot of buzz on them, and the audio is coming out on the Garden of Eden book. It seems to be the most popular right now.
Yeah.
So thanks for whatever you can do if you feel like it's worthy.
You may know, Rick, that Urantia Foundation now has an imprint label, and the Untold Story of Jesus was printed under that imprint label. So please send your submission. And what I want to say to everybody is, right, Ann Biggs, we need children's books. I have a children's book, but I can't draw worth beans. So I need somebody who can help put this together. This is a really important project right now. I see Elizabeth nodding. It's a really important project. We need to bridge this next generation, and we need to do some powerful children's books. So Elizabeth, you are, and Ann, I'm seeing both of you. You're like 2 shining angels on my screen. Do you have any thoughts to close us this morning? Elizabeth, I'm going to let you go first, my sister.
Oh, I was having trouble unmuting. Maybe I should just be silent. No, what I'm feeling is exhilarated, really. You made a beautiful presentation, and our lives are so short. We have so many gifts to put into action. And I just encourage, another thing I want to say is that what every person and group is doing is important to me. They're all beautiful tiles in this mosaic. It's different strokes for different folks, We need all of our kind of diverse talents, you know, in the way that we group together to do projects. I think with our Master Seraphim, they're all needed. They're all important, whether it's podcasting, vidcasting, you know, making a beautiful website, writing children's books, teaching classes, just whatever our particular talent is, boy, just get in there and use it. You know, find your voice and share it with people. It's a hungry world out there. And I think I love the idea of a holy decade, and just let's just bring God in a whole new, you know, transformed, beautiful, loving way into this world, and let's rebuild civilization on it.
Well, and following that thought before Ann speaks, and I asked the rabbi, is there any branding or marketing around? He said, no, I want this to go far and wide. So let us as a Urantia community consecrate, right, Christina, this holy decade to our planetary angels, to our thought adjusters, to Melchizedeks, to all those beings who have labored so long, to the midwares. God bless the midwares who've suffered through so many centuries of confusion and distress and infirmity. Let us dedicate this next decade of our life, which for some of us may be the last decade of our life, but let us dedicate it to a spiritual renaissance, to a renewal, wherever we find it. And it's as Elizabeth said so beautifully, it's as simple as a smile. Just smiling on our brothers and sisters. So Ann, I'm going to give you the last word here, my sister and my mentor.
Well, I can't.
I'm going to give young Ann the last word, and then I'm going to give old Ann, but I'm going to give a little bit older Ann. Go ahead, young Ann.
Just, I think this is wonderful what you've done today, and I think it's lit a lot of flames, a lot of pilot lights in a lot of people. And I think we all are leaving here with the message that we need, because we're all so unique and everyone is getting a unique message. Whatever that is, it's just absolutely perfect, like you all are. And, just that, always remember, if you do nothing more, just to smile as you pass by, as Jesus did, because, that's the tiniest little effort, but I think it means the most to everyone, and it changes your attitude. It will absolutely, the act of smiling actually changes you.
And
So
do you have 2 grandchildren, Ann?
Do I have grandchildren? No, I don't have children. I just have little kindergartners right now.
Little kindergartners, okay. And to quote that great philosopher, Louis Armstrong, we want it to be a wonderful world without going.
Thank you.
Thank you. And my sister, Ann Garner, you get the last word here.
You mean your old sister?
I didn't say that.
I decided many years ago never to say old, because I have a 105-year-old aunt and older. Oh, we're all old, not all of us here, but we're older. Wow, I'm very fulfilled. I feel very energized that what we've just experienced, and just my hat's off to you. And I've looked around at everybody, a lot of whom I know personally, and many, far too many that I don't know personally. So that's a goal of mine. And it will probably be virtual like this. My last thoughts is we are facing something continuing, unprecedented. And right now, more than, in my opinion, any time else, the pre-motives should be brought into focus, because they have greater meaning to us now. And I'll just read 3. I was glancing over there before you were mentioning my last thoughts. Difficulties may challenge mediocrity and defeat the fearful, but they only stimulate the true children of the Most Highs. I'm going to read, I'm going to go over to the next page. Anxiety must be abandoned. The disappointments hardest to bear are those that never come. And I know everybody knows these, but man, they're zingers right now. And the big one, the greatest affliction of the cosmos is to have never been afflicted. Mortals only learn wisdom by experiencing tribulation. Are we doing those now in an unprecedented way? And like Elizabeth said, we have such a short time, and you mentioned it, Gard. The other planets have longer lives, many of them. And as stages go forth, and we're designed to have much longer lives. But the help that we get, you ask about our thought adjusters, the angels. So we could, in this compressed time, if we purpose, we're going to be helped, regardless of how old we are. Have any of you noticed that, I'm going to get egotistical on behalf of Urantia book students. Our minds and our activity level and our purpose and what we do with quote unquote our own time is pretty much different from other people.
Anne, would you close us with a prayer?
Yes. Holy Father, Master Michael, dear Mother Spirit, we are so grateful for what you give to us in each moment to partake of. The encouragement, the blessedness that we sense daily, and most of all, the peace that passeth all understanding. As we sit in those times of sharing the inner life with you, and then the opportunities we have right now to interact with those that are fearful, disconnected, anxiety-ridden, hungry, desolate. May our voices ring forth with the truth of this revelation in a way that will impact their lives. Master, the midwayers reminded us the healings, and the greatest healing comes forth when the mind is healed. It's when the person is in the presence of a beneficent personality. And I thank you for being in the presence of so many beneficent personalities here. May their footsteps be guided virtually, as we cannot go out physically, to be that light upon a hill. Thank you. Amen and amen.
And amen. Thank you so much, Anne. And I want to ask anybody that's interested in starting a practice circle, so I'm looking at you, Kurt, please send me an email, gardj@me.com. I want to connect you because I think what we saw on the Mentimeter is that we need more personal transformation around what we're doing. And I know Elizabeth says, women, and amen to that. And so again, if anybody's interested, I think this is really the call of our moment, is to go deeper. And as we go deeper, we'll go wider. So God bless you. As we say, be safe, be grateful, and be blessed. We will see you all soon. God bless.
Thank you, Gard. You gave us an amazing lesson. I appreciate very much that your focus in what is important, personal transformation. This is for me delicious having here you today. Thank you very much.